All right. We talked about the CIA triad and different aspects that access control give you. When you come to system strategies, it should offer all of these things. There are different ways that you can go about implementing them. They should be able to tell you who's accessing your stuff, when they're doing it, and we're going to talk about different technologies to use. All right. We mentioned our triad, and we mentioned the 5 areas, the 5 aspects of security that access control offer. Why do we say unique recognition when it comes to identification, especially when it comes to personnel?
Accountability.
I think you both had it correct.
Accountability.
Yes, we want to know that that person did that stuff to that thing, and
You can't just go by someone's name.
yeah,
Something that's
there's too many Andys, right? There are fewer Brents, but there are too many Andys, right? Yeah, good. Authentication. It means that we're validating that that person says who they say they were. And authorization is, again, way back in the early time, we want to make sure when we're controlling access with our access controls that only those people that we want to see that information, only people that we want to manipulate that information are doing so. Different methods for doing this. We talked about badges earlier. What's the difference between an ID badge and an access badge? This is the kind of really trivial distinction that show up on the test. Difference between an ID badge and an access badge.
I love this. An ID badge identifies who the person is, whereas an access badge provides them access somewhere.
Yeah, that's actually it. I can't fault you for that. That's actually true. No, that's absolutely true. That's it. Yes, it seems so simple. It's silly, but yes. Why are they saying user ID is not an authenticator?
User ID is not typically kept secret.
Good. A lot of the times it's your email address, right? Or it's the same username configuration for the entire organization. Be Maliso, right? It's, yeah. Account number, or what's PIN stand for?
Personal identification number.
Good. Are these useful? Yeah. They can be used in the same manner that a user ID can. Sometimes they can be used in a way that a password can if they are kept confidential. System access control using a MAC address. What is a MAC address and what does it do for us?
Uniquely identifies a device, basically.
Good. Yeah.
What it does is basically if the MAC address of this is granted access to our system, then someone else can't impersonate me necessarily as easily.
Excellent. We're going to talk about that when we come to wireless security as well. I'm a big fan of filtering by MAC filtering. A MAC address on a piece of hardware or a device is like the VIN on a car, right? It says this is that car and only that car. Good. IP address. Can you identify a system or a user with an IP address? What is an IP address? Sorry. Gabriel.
Is a number that identifies a device connected to a network.
Excellent. Good. That's literally the truth. Everybody get that? Yeah, it's the number for that network session sometimes because IP numbers can change as well. They're not always static. We'll talk about those. Can you identify a machine at a given time or a user at a given time? Yeah. Through their IP address? Absolutely. RFID. Matt, you mentioned RFID earlier, right? Yeah. What does it do? What is it? And how can it help us identify systems?
It's usually just a chip that contains a unique number on it that is wireless. So.
Good. And they can be very small. They can be even flimsy, too. The libraries are using them now to track library books, right? Yeah. Why would you put that on your machine? Why would you put that on a device? Some devices already have them because they're mobile. But why would you put it on a large machine, desktop unit? Yeah, that's good inventory control. It's an easy way to make sure that it's not walking out the door. Good. Email address is another identification method. We talked about that. Could be your user ID, right? We want an ID to have these traits. Unique, we talked about. We want to make sure that only one person has that, so when it comes time to holding them accountable for their activity, we know who it was, and we can determine who it was, and we can hold their feet to the fire. Nondescript. What do we mean by that? What do we mean by nondescript?
You can't tell the function of what it does.
Excellent. Excellent. Again, we want bmaliso. We don't want sysadmin 2. We don't want to give away any more than we have to when it comes to our IDs, because our IDs are going to be open. They're going to be shared with the public. And then, just to make it complicated, we want them issued securely. We just said it's going to be open, so it's got to be nondescript, but now we're going to say we're going to securely issue that? Why? What does that mean? What are we trying to do?
Make sure the right person gets it.
Yeah, that user, right? Yeah. They should be the only one that has access to that data. Good. All right. Perfect transition into authentication methods. Something you know, something you have, and something you are. These are the distinguishers for authentication. Authentifying devices, authentifying knowledge, authentifying data, authentifying elephants. Authentifying elements. Multi-factor authentication, it's best to blend 2 or more of the factors when you're trying to protect something. Again, we're talking about defense in depth. If it's just one thing, that might be easy to guess or crack or hack. More than one thing, it makes it a little bit more difficult, right? Plus, it makes the movie cooler when they recreate it later, because now, the criminals have to do each of those steps to get in. Some good traits of passwords include, we talked about complexity. What makes a password complex? Length. Good. What else?
Uppercase, lowercase symbols.
Good. Good. Case sensitivity and?
Special characters.
Special characters. We keep beating this into the head of the users, don't we? Here's the paradox. If it's too complex, what are they going to do?
Write it down.
They're going to write it down. They're going to put it in their wallet, under the keyboard, because no one's ever thought to look there, right? It's like putting your keys in your shoes when you're at the beach. You master of security, you got it. No one's thought of that before. My favorite one, when I worked in the D.C. area in the federal space, was the guy who had it post-it noted on the ceiling, so he could just look up and type every morning when he logged in. You don't want, we talked about transparency before. You don't want to make it hard on the user to get access to the system. Too complex and they will. Which is why I'm a big fan of passphrases. What's a passphrase? What's a passphrase? Not a trick question.
It's used as a password, but it's longer than a password.
Yeah, it's got more words and spaces in between. And the level of complexity of a passphrase is much higher than a password, even though they're simple, basic words. I mean, if you just, you are ugly, is extremely mathematically complex when you include the spaces. That should be as good as an 8-character password with upper and lower case and special character. Yeah, that's a good way to go about it. What's a graphical password? What's the CAPTCHA system? Don't ask me to define that because I forget what it is, but what does it do?
Mostly used to prevent robots from logging in, sending email, things like that.
Downloading. I've seen a lot on FTP sites, right? Before you can download something, it puts a picture up that's obscured and visually difficult to make out from the background. One of the best ones that I've seen in implementation is a website where they give you a sentence, just a regular sentence, and say, what's the fifth word in this sentence? Because a spider bot or something like that won't be able to distinguish between those two sentences what a fifth word is. It doesn't understand, by asking the question in text, what that fifth one would be graphically. Good systems, good systems. Good. Something you have, tokens. We talked about those before too. There are different forms, asynchronous and synchronous, and we're going to get into that definition when we talk about encryption as well. But in terms of tokens, asynchronous comes offline. You would have a code built into it, usually based on a mathematical algorithm and your PIN. You carry it off-site when you want to remotely in, you type in your PIN, and it generates that password for that, usually a limited number of times to gain access. Synchronous are usually hooked up to the authentication server. Anyone know more about this? Correct me if I'm wrong, please. They're already in touch with the server, and they can tell you what the code is at any given time. Good. Static devices, memory cards, smart cards, and proximity cards. We talked about the difference between an ID card and an access card. These would be the access cards. There are huge discussions in the guide about the differences between different standards used in smart cards right now. Here is how it works. Here's it broken down step by step. If you want to connect to a given server, there's a challenge from that server sent to you first. You have to respond to it. Then it asks you for your token device. While you're logged on, you're going to look at your device. Anyone have one on them? I've seen key fobs. I've seen credit card size ones. Some of them have numbers that you can punch into them. Some of them are just displays. What you do is you check the token, you compare that number, or you take that number right there on it, you type it back into your system, send it back to the authentication server, and the server authenticates you. What is it that the token's giving you? It's giving you the authentication from the server that you are carrying that shared secret around in your pocket. That whatever mathematical formula is on there is running concurrently on the server, and the two match. So it proves that you were given access at one time because you have the token with you. Make sense? Questions on that?